Hi, thanks for tuning in to Kenneth Miller Studios Photography Tutorials. In this session, we're going to deal with camera equipment and selection. Now, we know that in the last few years, there's been a huge proliferation of devices that are capable of taking a half-decent photograph. Now, whether you want to shoot for yourself as a hobbyist, or whether you want to shoot for a publication, newspaper, any magazine, a real estate agent, anybody that requires quality photography, you're going to want to show up to that shoot with more than your Samsung Galaxy S5. So in this session, we're going to deal specifically with digital SLRs because they are the most versatile form of equipment with regards to camera bodies, camera lenses, and accessories. Now, there's a few important decisions you'll have to make when you're trying to choose what equipment to buy. Budget is usually the most important decision for most people. After that, it is brand name. Who do you want to give your money to? Whose equipment do you want to buy? And then after that, it is the features available on a specific type of equipment. For around $500, you can get a good entry-level digital SLR with landscape mode, sports mode, different types of settings that will give you lots of variance in different types of photography depending on what you want to shoot. Now, Canon and Nikon are the two biggest players in the digital SLR market. Each one has a very large, loyal following, and it all depends on personal preference. I recommend, if you're able, try out both types of equipment, get reviews, look online, see what people say about each different brand. Everybody has an opinion. Myself, I like to shoot with Canon equipment, and I have for many years, and I find that it's very high quality, the image quality is great, and the price is pretty much on par with what I would expect. Once you've decided on a brand name and a type of camera to buy, that is to say, is it going to be entry level or is it going to be higher up in the food chain? After that, it is what kind of lenses are you going to buy? A lot of camera bodies will come in a kit, and a kit basically is the camera body, one, maybe two lenses. You may get a camera bag, a remote, camera accessory, and some other odds and ends, lens cleaners, things like that. That's not a bad way to start. Normally, these kits are a little bit cheaper than buying each individual piece. And at an entry level, it's a good way to go to get you started with everything you need. You'll have a half-decent camera body, usually a wide-angle lens that will go from, say, 24 millimeters to 135, and then you'll probably get another zoom lens that will concentrate on the longer focal lengths, probably up to 300 millimeters. And that covers the range of focal length that you'll want to get started with. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about camera bodies and what you'll need to look for when making a decision on what to buy. Camera bodies vary in the materials that they're made from, and more specifically the features that are available. Now, if you plan on getting outside, being out in the elements, maybe in some wet weather, some very dry, windy, dusty conditions, you might have to spend a little bit more money to get a camera body that's a bit more resistant to those elements. Entry-level cameras, like the kits I talked about earlier, are usually plastic bodies, very well made, but not too weather resistant. Now, there's ways around that, of course. You can usually buy a cover for the camera body and covers for lenses. It'll fit over, protect your equipment from the elements. Or you can even construct one. I do that a lot of the time with nothing more than a Ziploc bag. As long as it's dry and the dust stays out of the equipment, you should be good to go. Now, with regards to features, again, what kind of photography do you want to shoot? If you're doing a lot of, let's say, nighttime photography, if you want to do astrophotography, some bulb photography, you're going to want a camera that focuses on shutter speeds. Now, bulb photography is an interesting and more of an artistic concept when it comes to taking pictures. Just about every digital SLR will have a bulb setting on it. And a bulb setting, just in a quick blurb, is basically a setting that will leave the shutter open for as long as you want it to. Whereas most other settings will leave it open for 1/10 of a second or 1/100th of a second, the bulb setting will leave the shutter open for until you turn it off, until you close the shutter. Now that's a completely different topic altogether, but that's another consideration. Now if you're doing a lot of sports photography, you may want a camera that has a higher shutter speed available to you. Entry-level cameras will have a high shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second, give or take 1,000th or 2. As you get up in price and quality of camera body, you will find that they will offer you 1/8000th of a second or 1/12,000th of a second. Very, very high shutter speeds, which will freeze pretty much any kind of motion. Excellent for sports photography. And again, if you want to get in at ground level, you can use an entry-level digital SLR and use the highest shutter speed. It will still give you very good results, but be a little bit cheaper and get you going in the field. So now let's talk a little bit about lens selection. This is a very important decision to make because the images that you're going to shoot, the scenes that you're looking at through your lenses are going to determine the image that comes out on your camera. As I was talking before, kit lenses are generally the cheaper of the lens family in any given manufacturer. Now when I say cheaper, I don't necessarily mean with regards to quality or workmanship. Usually what you will get is what is called a slower lens, and that refers to the maximum aperture available on that lens. And I'm going to talk more about aperture and how it's related to photography in another session. In this session, we're going to discuss aperture with regards to the price and quality of a lens that you might want to purchase. If you're able to get a lens that has a very fast aperture, and f4 is a good aperture to have on any lens. Now, as your focal length increases, an f4 will get more and more expensive. A 300mm lens with an f4 aperture will run you quite a bit of money because that becomes then a very fast lens. Now when you see a lens and you see a very large opening at the beginning, that's there for a purpose. That's so that the lens can capture more light, which is enabling you to have that higher shutter speed, and you can only get that higher shutter speed with a very wide aperture. All these things work in combination. So, in the beginning, if you're not going to spend a lot of money on your kit, if you're going to choose this route of getting an entry-level combination of cameras and bodies, you will be inhibited somewhat in your ability to take pictures at a long focal length with a very fast exposure.